about how one can judge the progress of one's day and if you will, to make a little bit of judgment on yourself. And what he said was that you could make a decision about the direction of your life and your participation in it at any given point by simply reflecting on those around you who may be the poorest of the poor, not just necessarily materially, but perhaps in spirit, perhaps in their conception of themselves. And ask yourself whether or not what you were doing, literally what you were doing, not what you're thinking, but what you were doing, how does it affect that person? Does it give them a moment or two of hope, of perhaps a sense of possible progress in their life that they might not otherwise have even conjured, save meeting with you, save being in your presence? And he said in a remarkable phrase that has stayed with me all my life, if you can feel that you have contributed even in the smallest way to freeing that person's soul of a sense of despair or of doom or of hopelessness, then all your doubts, as Gandhi said, will melt away. It's in a certain sense, to me, it's always been a gorgeous phrase to me, that your doubts will melt away. Not fly away or collapse or run or anything. They'll melt away. They'll disappear from you. And the Interagency Council has certainly, with its activities and those of each of the individuals and groups associated with it, helped me, I can assure you, to help me to melt my doubts away as to whether I was on the right track or whether I was being sufficiently supportive. It's an interesting thing. Virtually everybody, and I shouldn't say virtually everybody, literally everybody associated with the Interagency Council have been ones encouraging me. I thought, I have to be supportive, as governor. It's been the exact opposite. If anything, when people on the council see me, they're hey, we're with you. Be encouraged. Things are moving. We're working together. Everything is happening to the degree and extent that each hoped for. And that everybody is working together. Everything is getting coordinated. And that hopefulness and enthusiasm was actually gaining in the council, in the Interagency Council, because people didn't feel isolated anymore. They didn't feel that they were just on their own. They didn't think that, yes, they were trying to make their progress, but they were on their own, kind of in a silo. It hasn't happened. Quite the opposite. Everybody was encouraged. And there's been a particular person, though, and I think everybody will agree, who has helped to make this possible. We all know that it hasn't been an easy road, and that leadership in conjunction with anything that's intra-agency, anything that is attempting to become integrated, leadership is a rare and treasured quality, much to be desired and seldom rewarded the way it should be. And I want to say, and I'm sure, if I've been assured of anything at all as governor, I'm sure that what I'm about to say everybody is going to more than agree with. That if it wasn't for Lynn Hirakuji, I don't think that we would even remotely be where we are today. Lynn has worked extraordinarily hard and with a sense of purpose and dedication to come to this day, as a matter of fact. she's saying to herself right now. See, I have this inner ear that I'm listening, saying to herself right now, well, I'm so pleased that you recognized all my good work and efforts to this moment, but I'm so glad that I'm going to be able to hand it off momentarily to the gentleman that I want to introduce to you at this moment. When I say introduce to you, I can say, I think with some degree of certainty, that this will not be an introduction, brand new introduction to many of the people in the room. Colin Kippen brings a strong commitment and a sense of mission that I think many of us are familiar with, and the public as at large and as a whole will shortly recognize. He's coming home to Hawaii after serving the native communities of this nation. His service to Native Hawaiians, I think, is well known to us here in Hawaii, but perhaps not as well known as is his service to Native people throughout the nation. He, as a result, I think, is going to be able to bring a fresh perspective to the work ahead of the Council. He was executive director of the National Indian Education Association in Washington. He spent time prior to that with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as a deputy administrator and natural resources officer, director. We knew each other here in Hawaii and in Washington, D.C. And his knowledge of my efforts in Washington, D.C. did not discourage him sufficiently to keep him from being here today. If anything, this position that he assumes today is one of being a director, or probably more correctly, a fulcrum of collaboration and coordination. That's what he excels at. It's his values as a Hawaiian, his values associated with his work with Native people throughout the nation that has honed those that capacity for being a collaborator and a coordinator. He's dedicated. He's ready to work in this area. His experience, as I said, I believe, makes him ideally suited to move us forward. I want to thank him for taking on this challenge and invite him to come to the podium at this point. Colin? A word or two? All right.
Aloha mai kako. My name is Colin Kippen, and I know many of you. I've worked with many of you. I see a lot of friends out there, and I see a lot of friends that I haven't met yet. We're going to work together. We're going to make things happen. And what my job is, it's what the governor has just said, is to be a fulcrum. It really is about being a bridge builder, because the talent is in this room, and those agencies that are represented by you that are here today. So what we will do is we will work together. We will find solutions. We will offer those who have spent their lives serving the needy in our community who are homeless. We will work in a different way. And I think this is an opportunity for us to have a respite, to be able not to simply be constantly working, but to be able to lift our heads and to work with one another and to see those common solutions, to find those best practices, those better ways, and then to work together. I want to thank the governor for his leadership in creating this. I especially want to thank Lynn. I've gotten to know her over the last several weeks, and it's as though this is a race around a track, and she's had the baton for a number of months here, and she's been running with it. She's been out in the community having those community meetings. She's been listening to the community, listening to the homeless, and that information is coming together in a plan that we will release very shortly. I've been asked, why would you want to do something like this? And the reason I do is because of the words that are behind me. Umauke'ea, o ka aina i ka pona, the life of this land is preserved in righteousness. And that righteousness is to care for the neediest in our communities. And we will do that together. I really look forward to working with you. I really look forward to the good things that we will do together. And the last thing I really look forward to is for you, Governor, to sign that bill.
Thank you very much, Colin. Very good. Thank you very much, Colin. I'm going to look forward to that. But before I do sign the bill, 2804, relating to the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness. I always love the titles of the various bills. They seem, in a sense, almost bland, almost neutral, devoid of emotion and depth in the words themselves, but full of meaning and full of a portent of what we're committed to. And the reason that this bill is before us is because of the legislature that recognized this opportunity. And I want to thank the members of the legislature here, and I want to thank them for their foresight. I want to, in particular, recognize the committees and individuals on those committees within the House and Senate who brought this to today's opportunity to sign. In July of 2011, I created the council by executive order. And with the signing of this bill, then, the council will be established in statute, and thereby, and I believe, enhancing its ability not just to provide solutions for ending homelessness in Hawaii, but to fulfill the sense of aloha that is literally written into our Constitution. We're required by the Constitution. We imposed on ourselves, if you will, the idea that we needed to live aloha with and for one another, and the legislature has recognized that. This is something that I think we can be forever grateful for. I guess, Joe, there were many other legislators beside yourself who were involved in this, but I believe in a sense you'll be speaking for them or representing all of them today. But I hope you'll pass along to everyone who couldn't be here today my gratitude in particular, and the gratitude of all those who will be the beneficiaries. Members of the cabinet are here. All has represented various elements, obviously, on the Interagency Council are here, and we thank you all. What remains for me now is to actually do the signing and accept your applause at the end of that. I think the most efficient way for me to do it, should I do it at the podium, or should I get the podium down?
Open it to a few questions, because I know we're going to have a lot of photos after this, so I think the media has some questions, and maybe if Colin, you could join the governor in case they have any questions for...
You mean you have questions before we do the signing?
You can sign the bill, but then it's more like a photo op for everyone else.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Oh, so you mean so I should stay at the podium?
Yes, sir.
You can see how organized I am compared to the Interagency Council on Homelessness. Very well. I'll do exactly that. Colin, why don't you come up? Lynn, why don't you come up as well? And then we'll take holy pictures, I promise. Here we go. Ready? Done. Why don't you stay up here, Lynn? Good. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, yes, we'll take Colin, you come, and Lynn, and whatever I can't answer. In fact, these are the folks I'm sure you want to speak to about this.
This is a multi-dimensional problem. Public, visible to the public, they see this. And
Yes.
how do you measure progress? I see that in your release that you say certain numbers of folks have been taken off the street. But
Yes.
anyone driving through town on any given day can see the problem for themselves. And
Yes.
at what point can we say whether there's progress or not? And how do you measure it?
Well, I think there's what we can say is there is progress. The challenge here is that it is not something which is simply arithmetic. There may be people moving from one place to another. There may be people that you don't. The people that you don't see are maybe people that have recovered, that are making changes. The kind of thing that's happening now with the public housing under Hakeem Owansafi and Father Dave Gerlich and the board at Public Housing. We're rehabilitating units so that we now have not just shelter but housing for people who are making the progress. You won't see them on the streets, but others may be taking their place. That's because we have an ongoing phenomenon of trying to not only make an economic recovery but a social recovery. There is a differentiation taking place. You need only reflect on the headlines in today's Star Advertiser, I believe, appropriately enough, in the money section. If I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me correctly, the median price of a home in Hawaii hit $664,000. Sometimes these headlines, by the way, have a kind of triumphant sense about them. Isn't that great? Housing prices are going up. Well, I suppose that may be for someone. I think it was a house in Kaimaki pictured there today that came on the market around $660,000 or something. It sold for $700,000. What that tells me is that homelessness is not just a phenomenon of desperate people, perhaps mentally, emotionally, physically, but it is also a phenomenon of whether or not we are true to ourselves as a society, reaching out to one another for basic shelter and sustenance for one another, not just physically, but in terms of our social capacity to sustain ourselves as a community. There is no way that we can have a median income requirement of $664,000 to have a house, let alone a home. Not all is the same thing. Shelter is not the same thing as a home. A house is not necessary. A house may have a physical presence, but who is in that place to make it a home? Who can see each other in terms of family, in terms of community. So the commitment that Colin is about to undertake and the commitment that Lynn represents in terms of everybody on the Interagency Council is to see to it that we recreate for ourselves a sense of aloha here in Hawaii that enables everyone to have a sense of purpose and enables everyone to feel that they are connected to a family and to a community and that the shelter that they occupy constitutes a home. So, yes, there's an ongoing visibility of people who lack that opportunity, but that means that we have to redouble our efforts to see to it that we build workforce housing, that we rehabilitate that housing which can be available for those of modest means in terms of income that has fallen into disrepair and disuse. It means that we make a commitment to one another to see to it that we have the necessary jobs and opportunities for people living in the islands to be able to sustain themselves. It means that we work with OHA to see to it that we're able to provide housing. When people talk about residences, for example, not everything has to be high-rise luxury condominiums. That shouldn't preclude us then in talking about housing being made available to our own people. I recall very well when I was a member of the city council, and many people would come and they would argue about whether or not a development, it was called a development, and I always said to him, well, are we talking about housing here? Are we talking about homes now? You know, there's developments and there's developments. You know, there's developments by people who cater to those who have millions of dollars, perhaps to have second and third and fourth homes. Good for them. All well and good. But what about people for the first home? What about people who are doubling up and tripling up? When we talk about homelessness, let me tell you, there's a lot of people in homes right now because they are doubling up and tripling up in their families. There's a lot of Ohana units by default. I can tell you that, which means so many people in a room. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be addressing. The Interagency Council on Homelessness that I just signed is not dealing just with a category of people over here who can be seen as not having shelter. We're talking about the entire spectrum of having homes for our people who are working, people who want to work, people who want to have sustainable lives. And that's the kind of coordination that we'll be doing. And that's the kind of emphasis that we're going to push. Everything from living on the street to getting to shelter to getting into a home, getting into, no matter how modest, and into a sense of community then that gives meaning to one's life. Aren't you glad that I was just answering a question instead of giving a speech?
That's why I'm asking Lynn.
Yeah.
So these numbers that you gave us here, just trying to get back to these numbers here, more than 1,000 individuals moved off the streets from January through April, 79 individuals transitioned to permanent housing. Do you have any idea, is that better than a year ago numbers?
It is better than a year ago. And I don't have the exact numbers from a year ago, but if you go back to the 90-day plan, which covered a 90-day period, the numbers that we've reported are higher than just that 130-day period. So it's really been a dramatic increase. And if I would also, I'd like to share something in terms of how would we measure success. What you'll see with the new plan is that there are going to be a number of metrics attached to the strategies that we'll be rolling out. So what's very important to the administration is that not only do we have strategies in place, but we have ways to measure when we're accomplishing, making some accomplishments, and what are the metrics that we're going to assign to those accomplishments.
Do you know how much better things have gotten compared to that same 4-month period last year?
I can't recall the exact numbers from the 90-day plan, but yeah, definitely they are better. Mm-hmm.
And why, is there a single reason you can point to? Why have these have gotten more people off the street?
My guess is because we're working together in a different way. There's a lot more information sharing. There's a lot more collaboration that's occurring within the service provider community and with the service providers with government as well. So I think when we talk about collaboration works. Thank you.
Mr. Kippen, to follow on to that, in your observation of what we've done or your read of the draft plan so far, what won't be done here? What kinds of things have proven not to work? I know there was some discussion when the 90-day part about whether or not to feed in the parks or to try to bring them to shelter instead. What sorts of things do you know don't work anymore and will not be part of it?
Well, I think I'm going to answer this question generally because the specifics I need to be informed of by the experts who are part of our HUI, which is this group of 24. But I can tell you what I absolutely believe what Lynn and the governor have said, which is the way to make something work better is to bring people together. And you have to do that. The reality is that right now there may not be any more money in the system. If you look at what's going on at the federal government and with our state government, the reality is that we're maxed out. But there is something that we have not yet fully captured, and that is the human capital that exists among all of the people in all of these agencies, the public as well as the private sector, and we need to build those bridges. So I'll tell you what won't be in there. What won't be in there is a siloed approach. What will be in there is that we'll work together, and that I will do everything in my power to build bridges.
I'll give you a good example of what Colin is talking about, and it's a very good question. What not to? What we won't be doing is relying on individual agencies to do the best they can to work in what he characterized as a silo fashion. Let me give you an example. U.S. vets. we are coordinating with the workforce folks and with moving people into shelters now that didn't have shelters, keeping them open weekends, and then transitioning people who are able to work into housing that previously was so dilapidated or neglected that it was simply uninhabitable. The Public Housing Authority now is rehabilitating these units by the dozens, and soon it will be hundreds, and people are moving into them. When they move into them and they've got a place literally to be able to call home and to be home, then they're meeting their work efforts. This is especially true for families with children. We are rationalizing what we're doing differently. What there won't be happening anymore is gangs running public housing. So that people are afraid to actually be in housing that has a public foundation. We have security now that's moving. We're rehabilitating existing housing. So these are the kinds of things that enable people right now who have the ability to help themselves, and we'll be doing more of that. And then we're going to have to work on the question of seeing to it that we effectively assist those who are unable to help themselves. There are folks who are incapable because of addiction, because of mental problems, because of challenges, those kinds of things, who are not capable of making good decisions for themselves. Decisions will have to be made for them. This is one of the things that was involved in us saying about the feeding. We are not going to continue to enable people to destroy themselves. We are not going to be observers of the self-destruction of others. We're going, and that may take some certainty on our part that decisions are going to have to be made on behalf of people. Especially those who are a danger to themselves or to others.
Were there any other strategies that the public had been invited to participate in that will continue or that will change? I think there was the phone number to dial for the care event and things like that. Lynn, did you find that those things were helpful, or what do you want the public to do or not do going forward to be a part of this?
We did find that to be very, very helpful, and what I'd like to share with you is when we did the public meetings in March, while the numbers weren't extraordinarily high of those who attended, we heard so much from the public in terms of how much they saw that the government was taking a look at this and trying to treat it seriously. The members of the public were very, very engaged, very informed, and very interested in what the government was doing and service providers are doing. And our plan forward is to be as transparent as we can as we're moving the plan forward. There were a number of specific ideas that came up, and what the council will do is to take a look at all of those specific actions. There are far too many to go into at this point, but what the council will do is take a look at each one of those and determine whether those are appropriate actions that would be attached to the various strategies.
On that, perhaps I should be just a tad more specific about it. People are homeless because they don't have homes. They're poor because they don't have money. Now, okay, why is that? Among other things, I'm going to go back to my point about the median price being $664,000. Very few have that kind of financial resource. So that's why you'll be able to see the following. And this is cited, and I appreciate Joe and the legislators putting this together. Take a look at the bill itself. 1/3 of the sheltered homeless are children. 10% are veterans. I think it's probably a little bit higher than that number. 60% have lived in Hawaii for more than 10 years. This is not just people coming off the airplane. The anecdotes, you can find folks like that. I found them on the grounds right over here in the Capitol, talked to people who just came. But they're few and far between. Half of the families who are homeless include someone who's employed. This is very, very important to note. Half homeless. I'm not talking about the mentally disabled now. I think that's where we have to make our differentiation, because if there's a mental or emotional or physical challenge there, with that's another category of activity you have to deal with. But half of the able-bodied homeless are employed. More than a third of them are Hawaiian. That's one of the reasons you see OHA here. That's one of the reasons that you see Native Hawaiian groups and individuals focusing in this area. That's why when we rehabilitate these apartments, people say, "What are you doing?" The first thing we're trying to do is to make a home available, to make a shelter available. To enable people to see themselves as more than just absolutely the flotsam and jetsam of humanity, to see themselves as more than beach people, that there is a place to go and a place to call home, that is more than just shelter itself. And so that is taking place as we speak. And more people who are employed, more people who want to be employed and can be employed, more and more people who need to just have a place that they can rent at a price that they can afford and bring their families into it, is taking place daily. That's our very first step, and the rest will come with it. I mentioned before about a third or more being Hawaiian. That's why in the settlement, for example, and that is taking place right now, people talked about entitlements. I want to make sure people understand what that means in the Hawaiian context, in the OHA context, and they can speak for it to themselves. What they're saying here is we're talking about residential activities. And we have to be very open at Department of Hawaiian Homelands too, ceded lands and housing. This is something that we have to work in a cooperative way on. Luxury high rises are one thing. Housing for ordinary families, Hawaiian or otherwise, Native Hawaiian or otherwise, is another category altogether, and we need to work on that, and we are. And I think you're going to see, both from the point of view of statistics and numbers, as has been asked, and from the perception of the community as a whole in terms of atmosphere. When housing becomes available, you see a distinct change in homelessness. It sounds on the surface as, well, of course, if you get A, then you're going to have B. But the fact is that part of homelessness is a direct factor of the idea that there is in fact no home to go to. Even if you were desirous, even if you were capable, it's not there. We have to make sure that is the role of government. That's the role of community. That's the role of Hawaiian values that we all subscribe to. No child not in Hawaii is going to be left alone. No child is going to be homeless. We are all children of God, and we are all going to be together. And so we're going to solve this together. We're going to make certain that we do not bifurcate or differentiate ourselves in terms of our commitment to one another as brothers and sisters. Thank you. Oh, holy pictures. That's right. Yes, our departments do. There's Dwight. Yeah, thank you very much. How should we do this?